Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to finish up with problem solving and decision making as we take a look at groupthink. Now, groupthink is a term and it's a phenomenon that occurs when really everybody just wants to agree with everybody else. I can tell you in ministry that has been one of the most frustrating things that I've had to deal with as I'm trying to look at new ideas and new directions for our church. People just want to be on the same page and not disagree with the pastor. That can be not only aggravating, but it also can be destructive for that organization. So it happens in ministry, it happens in business. So let's take a look at this last section that deals primarily with groupthink. Okay, welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to finish up Chapter 8, Decision Making and Problem Solving. Now, we saw last time the different models of decision making. Today we're going to look at group decision making in organizations and the factors that affect group decision making. First we see group polarization, then we see groupthink, and then we see group problem solving. So let's take a look at those in detail. Group polarization is the tendency for a group's average post-discussion attitudes to be more extreme than its average pre-discussion attitudes, and they call that risky shift. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that before you have concluded the meeting or before you have gotten the group together, might have had an attitude about something or a thought about something, belief about something, but once the discussion is over with, your attitude may change or it may become more extreme than it was before you started the discussion. For instance, you might have been on the fence about gun rights, and you might have been, okay, well, I'm for it, but I'm not really sold either way. And then you get into a big discussion, and all of a sudden you are convinced that the Second Amendment applies to everybody and that we all should own guns if that's what we want to do. We have that freedom. So your attitudes become more extreme and more solidified after the discussion than it was before you engaged in it. Now, what are some of the ways in which polarization occurs? Well, you increase confidence from shared opinions. If you see that other people feel the same way, chances are you're going to join in that crowd. You also hear persuasive arguments convincing weaker supporters, and that's happened all the time. We see that as people are given facts, they become more convinced that this is the right answer. Now, there are some people, no matter what you give them, facts makes no difference. They're going to believe what they're going to believe. But normally, a person will become more convinced if they see evidence or they see convincing or persuasive arguments. And then individuals substituting group responsibility for individual responsibility for the decisions. So if the group is going to be held accountable, you're probably going to be more outgoing than if you're going to be singled out for a decision that's going to be made. Now, the next phrase that we're going to look at is groupthink. Now, this concept is really just the desire to be on the same page. Everybody wants to agree. As you see here, it's a mode of thinking that occurs when members of a group are deeply involved in a cohesive in-group, and the desire for unanimity offsets their motivation to appraise alternative courses of action. So what you have here is just the desire to agree. And we've seen the problems with groupthink. When you look at the two space shuttles, if you go back and do your research, you'll see that the two space shuttles that exploded, they exploded as a result of groupthink. When the engineers told the decision makers that these shuttles are not ready to fly, they were under pressure to go ahead and sign off on the go-ahead for them to launch, and because the engineers gave in to it and everybody wanted to be on the same page, they all decided that it would be okay to let those shuttles go up into space. And you see history taking place because both of them exploded. That's groupthink. The effects of groupthink that your slide here shows us is a consideration of and focus on fewer alternatives. You're really not going to offer many alternatives to the issues. Failure to perceive non-obvious risks and drawbacks of an alternative. You reject expert opinions, and that's what they did with NASA and the space program. Ignoring potential for setbacks or actions of competitors and not developing contingency plans. We think this is good because everybody agrees that it's good, so we're not going to challenge it. We're not going to have a plan B. We're just going to go with what we've got. So that is a common phenomenon, but it is a dangerous phenomenon. And some of the conditions that are favorable for groupthink, strong group cohesiveness. If everybody is tight-knit and nobody wants to hurt or offend or challenge anyone else, that's when you can have this. Leader's promotion of a preferred solution. If that leader is charismatic and can influence people, he or she may lead the group into making a decision that is in his or her best interest or what they think are best. Insulation of the group from experts' opinion. You don't get the experts to come in and tell you, no, this is not going to be a good decision. You're just going to go off of what you think, and then the rest is going to be history. Now, figure 8.5 just gives you an overview of the groupthink process. You have the group characteristics, and wedged in between is time and leadership style. And then when you start showing the symptoms, you start making defective decisions. And then that decision outcome will be defective too. So it's one of those things where you may have a good idea, but if you're not willing to voice it, the group is going to suffer. People are going to suffer. Now, what are the symptoms of groupthink? Well, that's going to be in our next slide. I'm going to go ahead and, again, just outline all of it. It's the illusion of invulnerability. You know, we're successful here. We've worked good. We're a good group. So whatever we think is going to naturally be okay. Then you have collective efforts to rationalize or discount warnings. The NASA program, their excuse was the amount of money that they are using up, and as a result of that, they pressured the engineers to go ahead and just do away with all types of suggestions and protocol to stop it, and they were able to rationalize it because of budgets. So, and that had nothing really to do with the integrity of the spaceships, but they, because of the budgets and politics, they were able to rationalize that those shuttles going up. Unquestioned belief in the group's inherent morality. Hey, you know, we're on the good side. We're fighting the good fight. So whatever decision we make together is going to be a good one. Stereotype views of enemy leaders. It's us against them. We've got to beat them to the punch. Direct pressure on a member, and again, that's what happened with NASA. Self-censorship of deviations. That means you're not going to talk. You're not going to voice your opinion. Shared illusion that you are unanimous in all of this. Emergence of self-appointed mind guards. So you are really discounting, protecting, insulating really the group from rational decision making. There are no alternatives in this type of environment. You're just going to go by and do what the group is going to do. Now, when it comes for prescriptions, I'm just going to let you guys take a look at that in figure 8.2. The leadership has prescriptions, organizations, individual, and the process. There are prescriptions for each of them that will help alleviate or at least curtail the effects of groupthink within an organization. Now, when it comes to decision making, you want to be able, as I've said in the past 2 sessions, you need to have participation. You need to have people who are knowledgeable, who will give you the best counsel in whatever issue you're dealing with. And participation, as you see here, is the degree to which employees should be involved in the decision-making process. Now, the benefits, as you see, it helps in judging problem-solving situations. It helps produce more and better solutions. It helps in solving complex problems and creates a greater interest in the task. There hasn't been, to my recollection, every time I've had to make decisions that were unique or complex, there hasn't been a time when I have not benefited from using as many people as I could get in the group and getting all of their opinions. They would come up with things that I haven't even thought about. So it does you, the leader, the decision maker, it does you a great service to utilize these people. I mean, God sent them to support you, and you should use them as such and let them help. Now, problem-solving difficulties. So there are some factors that limit alternatives being generated, and one of them is immediate reactions to alternatives. If you want to decide on the first alternative or second one, you're not listening to the rest of the alternatives. So just a knee-jerk reaction to alternatives can hurt you. Experience, status, power of some members intimidates less confident members, and that leads to groupthink. They don't want to go against the grain. I don't want to go against the big boss or whatever. And then limitations on idea generation imposed by the group leader. And this is the group leader pretty much just controlling the environment so that you are not able to be able to give out alternatives. Now, we've talked about the 3 techniques for being able to generate alternatives. You have brainstorming, and again, that's just people throwing out ideas. Some of them are crazy, some of them are serious. Nominal group technique is, again, where you collect people's written suggestions and you write them all up on a board. No one talks during this time, and then each idea is critiqued. No one knows who wrote what. So there's some anonymity there, and that's what you want to protect, because that seems to be the most common factor in people not speaking, is that they don't want to be known. They want to remain anonymous. And then, of course, the Delphi technique is when you go around and give different responses to questionnaires or surveys, and as you respond, it allows the decision makers to gain closer proximity to the answer to the problem that they're facing. So all 3 of them work. The only one that really guarantees anonymity is the Delphi technique, because normally these questionnaires are sent out to people. You don't put your name on them, you just send them back in. So that would be one way of doing that, but it does get expensive and time consuming, especially if you have a third-party vendor doing that for you. Now, creativity is the ability to generate new ideas or to conceive new perspectives on existing ideas. You have creativity in the individual and the creative process. I teach creativity and innovation in another class, and one of the things that people need to realize is that everybody creates and everybody is innovative. If you've ever solved an issue, if you've ever improved upon something, then you are an innovator, or you're a creator at least. And innovation and creativity are essential in business today, but most of what we are experiencing today that we have, the computer, someone thought, I believe it went before Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, but someone decided that, hey, we need to develop something beyond the typewriter where I can see visually on a screen things that I'm typing and use it. And as we created the computer, someone else said, well, if we've done that, what if we did this and added to it? That's innovation. Creativity is producing something from scratch. You create something. So there is a step process in the creative process, and these are the steps. You have the preparation where you're thinking about it. You are looking at a problem and you are generating ideas to solve that problem or to create something. You have the incubation stage, which once you have accumulated the data regarding that creative thing or that innovative thing, then you just let it simmer in your mind and you think about it. Then you have insight, and that's the little light that goes off. And there you are with the creation of whatever it is you're going to have. And then you have verification, which is making sure that what you have done is going to be successful. You evaluate after the creation of it or the innovation occurs. So really when you think about it, we are always innovating. We may not create a lot of things, but we innovate to a great deal. A lot of people call it jerry-rigging. A lot of people calls it, just engineering something to make it fit our needs and so forth. So you don't have to create a light bulb or a computer to be an innovator. Really, innovation comes as a result of you solving a problem that you are dealing with. And once you solved it and altered the status quo, then that makes you an innovator. Now, creative individuals, most people will tell you all of the great innovators and creators in this century have pretty much all agreed that average people have the same ability to create and to innovate as those that have risen to prominence. It does help for you to have background experience if you're going to make a new device that is, let's say, some kind of mechanical advice. You may want to have a background in mechanics or engineering or something like that. It does help. It's not always required because someone who is outside of that realm can see things differently from someone who is within that realm. Personal traits, you need to be a risk taker. You need to be able to think out of the box, and that's cognitive abilities as well, which means that you can think through a process or that you can analyze and assess what's going on and change it. And then we see here enhancing creativity in organizations. And the methods would be using explicit goals to make creativity a part of the organizational culture. And that's what we are striving for today in what we call the learning organization. The learning organization believes that we should leverage our resources to the human resource element. That means we need to invest in our people, to train them, develop them, to make them garner and harness their creative ability and innovative ability. And with that, the organizations are going to thrive because they're constantly thinking of new ways to improve, to do things better. That's certainly a far cry from the way it used to be when the bosses were in charge and they really didn't want to hear what other people had to say. They didn't care about their input. The only thing they cared about was getting the job done and people following orders. So we've certainly come a long way from that style of leadership to where we are today, where we're trying to elicit from our employees and our ministry staff creative and new ideas and ways of being able to do business. Well, today you were able to see that groupthink is not only destructive for the organization, it's also deadly at times. Now, you may not make a decision that will cause the deaths of people, but you can make decisions ineffectively and inefficiently and cause damage to the organization. Now, God has given each and every one of us people to come into our path to support us. We need to use them. We need to get their ideas and their suggestions. And you need to be supportive of your leader when they are looking for answers and alternatives. Don't be fearful. Give them the best counsel that you can give them. I can tell you they'll appreciate it. I know I do as a pastor, and I used to as a business leader. Try to get the best information that you can from as many as you can, and that will only increase your chances of being a very efficient and effective manager. Well, that's all we have for this week. Take care, and I'll see you next week.